There are three goals to our project. First, to develop a comprehensive analytic framework for self-control informed by psychology, economics, and philosophy. Second, to use this framework in conjunction with existing empirical data to advance understanding of the origins, consequences, and deliberate cultivation of self-control. And finally, to cross-fertilize academic disciplines that traditionally have pursued the study of self-control in isolation. Now, we think of virtues as a relatively stable, interrelated set of dispositions for feeling, thinking, it's the reasons for what you're doing, acting, and conceiving of your situation that are admirable, beneficial to society, and unlike skills widely applicable across an individual's life. Now, our working definition of self-control is that it's a disposition to choose and pursue a personally valued goal in the face of temptation. And finally, there is actually ample evidence that it meets the criterion I mentioned about being socially beneficial. Recent studies have shown that self-control is positively correlated with physical health, psychological health, academic achievement, positive citizenship, marriage, job performance, and of course not positively correlated with crime and aggression, but you get the point. Now, economics, philosophy, and psychology all study phenomena that you might call self-control, but although their conceptions of self-control are overlapping, they're not exactly the same. So economists are interested in preference for long-term gain over short-term gain. Psychologists are interested in a disposition to resist impulses in favor of pursuing goals that are important to the agent. And philosophy is interested in a rational capacity to resist impulses in favor of pursuing goals that are correctly important to the agent. So one of the big issues that we hope to make progress on is just to figure out how much do these different conceptions of self-control overlap so that we can facilitate interdisciplinary work. And our discussions about that already have been pretty interesting. I can just say, since I'm a philosopher, I want to say just a word about what I think the philosophical outcomes of this work will be. There are a couple of assumptions that philosophers, virtue ethicists, tend to make about virtue. First, they think that each virtue is a single configuration of soul or mind. But what the model that Jim and Angela have been working with suggests is that not only are there multiple dimensions to self-control, but what those dimensions are in a single self-controlled individual change over time. And that raises really interesting ontological questions about what a virtue is. I mean, if one self-controlled agent has a different, sort of configuration that counts as self-control that differs from what another self-controlled agent has, in virtue of what are we calling them both the virtue of self-control?
Let me just describe a couple of these data sets. Obviously, daring data, some of these are actually prospective experimental studies, for example, the Irish study. In each of these cases, we have measures of self-control, and we have measures of lifetime outcomes, and we also have measures of manipulation in terms of time. Let me just sketch a framework. So we have very rich data sources which will be augmented in the course of our study. The measurement framework that we have is probably sketched out very simply. I just have a couple of minutes. But you can think of various behaviors. The beauty of this project, I think the interest is, we start off with very firm, very secure logical foundations, some clear definitions, and then we take it to data and we try to understand two aspects. One is the question of measurement. There's a whole issue of measurement, and this has come up in several of the discussions already. But let me just think about a certain behavior at a given age, and for us, age is important because we have a developmental aspect to our proposal. So we can think that a certain behavior depends on preferences, and we have a whole line of work. I'm an economist, econometrician. We have a lot of work about trying to understand preferences, elicit preferences, and then study from various kinds of data in different environments.
Let me just move to the second part, which gets to a theme that Gabriel already sounded, but I will just reiterate. Namely, we want to think about the dynamics of this capacity formation. We use the word skill, but actually should be capacity. So what we're going to understand is not just whether or not these things are stationary. We have a lot of evidence now. We've done some previous work where we see capacities like self-control, like other aspects, even IQ, but certainly other capacities evolve with time. And we want to understand how exactly these evolve. And so we break it into three general categories. One is how the capacity capacity is affected in terms of just self-productivity. Certain capacities can help foster other capacities. This leads to a certain dynamics of life cycle attainment. Second, we understand what economists would use the word investment. So here we're thinking more broadly about parental inputs, societal inputs, actual deliberate consciousness, habituation, practice, cultivation, and so forth. And then finally, environmental variables. And each of these schemes we actually have matched to the data. We have developed a whole econometrics, statistics, where we try to apply this and then come up with various policy implications. So you can go back to Gabriel's list at the very beginning and say, well, these feed in through this measurement equation to things like success in voting participation or various aspects of health and so forth and so on. We can understand then which policies and which stages and where in the life cycle we can intervene, or at least understand where we might go wrong or we might go well, in terms of not only providing investments but general environments which actually cultivate those capabilities. So that's the broad scheme of what we're doing.